A16Z is beefing up its regulatory chops. Brian Quintenz is the latest former regulator to join the storied venture capital firm. He joins as an advisor on the policy team as A16Z starts deploying a whopping $2.2 billion from its latest crypto fund. I think this is super interesting. I think A16Z sees where things are going. And I think, we saw that in a big way this week with Brian Armstrong from Coinbase taking on the SEC in a tweet storm. And I think, it's important to note here that A16Z is an early and often backer of Coinbase. And I think they see themselves as playing an increasingly large role in shaping these conversations on Capitol Hill. So this hire makes sense in that light and is really interesting to see. I'm going to throw this to Naomi. Do you think that A16Z is going to take the torch for these regulatory discussions in DC? And do you think they're going to serve that conversation well or not?
That's a great question. I think that Brian Quintenz is going to be a fantastic addition to their team regardless. I'm a big fan of the stuff that he said about crypto. He's been, constantly pushing back against the SEC, saying stick to your jurisdiction, buddy, which is really nice to see. I like it when there's conflict in government because they spend time fighting each other and not fighting innocent businesses who are trying to provide value to consumers. So I liked that pushback he was giving them. He's also been very outspoken about the DeFi space, especially in response to Gensler's comments about we're all going to crack down. And then, Quintenz came out and said, who are you protecting in this? There is no central entity in a lot of these companies. So does the purview, is it up to the government to fight this when it's just individuals dealing with individuals? He just brings up some really great points about all of that. So I'm excited to see what value he can bring, especially to a company like A16Z, where they've just got their hand in everything. They are real movers and shakers in the space who are providing a lot of resources to a lot of the crypto space. So I hope that Brian Quintenz can be part of those resources, that it can potentially help some of these companies that are now being scrutinized and who are trying to find their feet in this weird regulatory gray area where the government is just someone had this great tweet today where they're SEC announces a new Schrodinger law where it changes when you look at it, and whether or not it's a security changes, whether or not it's in someone's best interests from the regulator. So I just thought that was very funny and apt. Wanted to add that in there. But yeah, very excited about Brian Quintenz jumping into the crypto space. I think that's a good fit.
I think it's not surprising that A16Z would bring someone like Quintenz on board. You have to think that most of their investments are in crypto firms, and they would need someone who is able to navigate the field. I think so. I know we talk about the opaqueness when it comes to the regulatory. What's the word I'm looking for? When it comes to regulation, the regulatory landscape. I always get stuck on what to say after regulatory. When it comes to the regulatory landscape, there's a lot of opaqueness. But as a journalist, it's really exciting to watch the law change. I think the law has stayed very much the same for a very, very long time, especially when it comes to securities, and seeing this battle kind of take place in front of our eyes is really exciting. And it will be exciting to see if people like Quintenz and positions like these can make the change we need to see innovation continue to happen. So I think this is just great news all around, but I'll pass it down to Will.
Yeah, interesting to me is that A16Z is doing this, and it makes total sense. I was thinking the other day, who has more on the line than someone like A16Z, which right now has a $2 billion fund for distributing capital that they've got. Don't fact check me that yet, Zach, but you can fact check me in a second. But they have a huge fund dedicated to cryptocurrency companies and forthcoming investments in the cryptocurrency space. The people who put money in A16Z's hands to be able to do that have a vested interest in cryptocurrency being around in 5 or 10 years. Those companies that put that money into A16Z's hands, I have a good feeling that they know people even higher up than A16Z does, and they have an interest in kind of pushing that through the lobbying space. So I think that's kind of interesting to see the feedback cycle here, right? We have regulators moving into the VC land, VCs putting money into entrepreneurs' hands, entrepreneurs putting out new products that customers want. And we're kind of seeing that natural cycle go along. I think it's also interesting to see how many regulators are just fascinated by the crypto space. They obviously can't get enough of it. Brian Brooks went right into the crypto space, even though he just left Binance US. Giancarlo went right into the crypto space, even though he just left that position. And now you have Quintenz coming into this space as well. Everyone is really, really interested in the space, regardless of Gary Gensler and other people who are looking at the space right now with a little more critical eye. There's more interest than ever from people who are in regulatory spots or in bigger positions. I mean, they could go to Goldman Sachs or they could go to the JP Morgans of the world, and they're choosing not to.
Yeah, really interesting. Fact checked. Correct, Will. You got that. You nailed that one. So good work. Shout out the wins as well. But yeah, I mean, they're assembling a bit of a dream team, right? So they got Katie Hawn, who's a former former high up in DC. They got Bill Hinman, who was formerly with the SEC, and now they're adding Quintenz to the roster. And I think you're right. I mean, they have more capital to invest, but they've also, this is their third crypto fund, right? They have major bags to protect. If their bags suddenly become questionable and whether or not people can access those assets that they're heavily invested in, that's going to be a big problem for A16Z, its limited partners, and their well-connected friends. So for them to be staffing up on the regulatory side seems to make sense. And if it's ultimately a showdown between SEC and A16Z, man, that's going to be interesting to watch.
I'm
major
front
bag
row
alert
for that show.
Major bag alert. But yeah, Naomi, I saw your hand up. I want to give you the last word.
Yeah, I just wonder whether we're going to see on the horizon a battle play out between the CFTC and the SEC, because you had the SEC come in strong and they came in and said everything is a security, everything is our jurisdiction. Meanwhile, all these other agencies are kind of trying to catch their breath. They're like, well, maybe this is our jurisdiction too, but SEC has really put in the groundwork. They've laid this foundation and they're going after companies. So I wonder whether adding Brian Quintenz with his experience at the CFTC is going to, whether it's like an omen of this battle to come. We know that they've been setting up joint regulatory boards between different agencies, but it seems like the SEC is still running the show no matter what other organizations they put in these government oversight committees. It is very interesting. If that happens, I'm not sure whether CFTC will be any better for companies than SEC regulations, especially now that Brian Quintenz is no longer at the helm there, no longer one of the commissioners there. So we'll have to see what happens there, but it could be an interesting battle playing out over jurisdiction. But let's change track. Will, what have we got next?
Zach, you have a final thought?
I'm just seeing this in our news channel. Another CFTC commissioner, Dan Berkowitz, who took a more hardline stance on DeFi, is planning to leave the agency soon. So a lot of interesting activities in the regulatory sphere. Okay, just wanted to get that in. That's the latest from the CoinDesk Slack, the news channel. It's popping. It's always popping.